Hello and welcome to this 26th day of MIAMAFV, where we take a look at the greatest day in motorsports.
It's red panty night when you decide to fight me, yeah?
Have you ever? No, I've never! I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
I'm gay.
Tomorrow will be the greatest day in motorsports. You want to know how I know that? Because it's always the greatest day in motorsports every single year. The Sunday before Memorial Day has three of the biggest events all year. The Monaco Grand Prix, the Indy 500, and the Coke 600 with NASCAR. And what makes this the best is the fact that these are staggered out, so you can just watch one after the other after the other. They never overlap, so you can just veg out in front of the TV for 12 hours and just watch as much motorsports as you can fucking handle for the day. So let's get things started off with the Monaco Grand Prix. The Monaco Grand Prix has been run pretty much every single year since 1924, except during World War II, because it's kind of hard to do a motorsports race when there are Nazis shooting at you. But since then, it has been a cornerstone of the Formula One schedule, and a lot of famous guys have won the race. It is the crown jewel race of the year. If you can win just that one race, even throughout your entire career, your career is deemed a success. It's a very, very tight track. There's not a whole lot of passing going on. Most of the passing happens in the pits and stuff. If somebody does make a pass out on the track, it's usually pretty breathtaking, but it is awesome to watch these expensive multi-million-dollar cars have at it on these tight streets of Monaco. So who do I got this year? Well, Sebastian Vettel, he won last year, and before that it was Lewis Hamilton, and then Nico Rosberg driving for Mercedes 3 years in a row. So of the last five, Mercedes has four, and then you have Ferrari with one last year. This year, Sebastian Vettel's been pretty good. He won the first two races, and then Daniel Ricciardo won over at Shanghai, and then Lewis Hamilton has won the last two in a row. Lewis Hamilton could make it 3 wins in a row if he can win at Monaco. Like I said, he won there 2 years ago. He can definitely do it. I would like for Sebastian Vettel or his teammate Kimi Räikkönen to get it done. I've always been kind of a Ferrari fan since watching Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello run around back in the 90s and the 2000s with Ferrari. So I'll definitely have my Ferrari Nation hat on during the race, be pulling for the both of them. But Lewis Hamilton, I mean, he can always get it done, and Daniel Ricciardo, I think it's really between those three guys, Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo, Lewis Hamilton. Who do I got? I'd like old Seabass to get it done, but I'm going to go on the side of Lewis Hamilton for the Monaco GP. By the way, the Monaco Grand Prix will be happening early morning Eastern Standard Time. That'll wrap up, and then at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time we have the opening ceremonies for the Indy 500, which has been run for over 100 years now over here in the United States. Unlike the Monaco Grand Prix, the Indy 500 is an oval race. It actually happens on a rectangular oval that measures 2.5 miles long. The race itself is gonna be good. It's been really good for the last few years. They kind of got a new aero package, got a new car. We'll see how that works, but practice has been promising. It looks just like the good old Indy that we've come to know. And Bump Day, as of recording this, was yesterday, and in a terrible turn of events, the guy I was really pushing for as the dark horse for the race, James Hinchcliffe, did not make the field. There were 35 cars vying for 33 spots. He didn't make it, and another driver that didn't make it was Pippa Mann. She's made the race, it seems like every single year for a long time. Like that's like her one big race that she always somehow manages to find a way into, and she just got bumped from the field, her and James Hinchcliffe. And there were a lot of people saying, you know, I don't know about Bump Day this year. These cars are really, really close together. The worst car in the field and the best car in the field, there's not a whole lot of deviation in there, and if one of those guys in the middle or even towards the front has a bad run, he might not make the field, or she might not make the field. And you know, you run the risk of having a big star like Hinchcliffe, this big media personality, not being in the show. And everybody called it, said that might happen, and it did. You know, I've always pushed for Pippa Mann. She's kind of like a hero of mine, just how she's able to cobble together a race team and get a car and go to Indy like every single year and make it pretty much every single year. And she didn't make it this year, man. I feel bad for her, and I feel bad for James Hinchcliffe too. Like, he's been really good this year, and I picked him as a dark horse to win the thing because he's definitely got the talent and the daring to get it done. And so that sucks. And the pole winner, as of recording this right now, has not yet been decided, but the Fast 9 have been. Up front, you got Scott Dixon and Helio Castroneves, basically 1 and 2 right now. And then you got right outside of that, at the last car in the Fast 9, Danica Patrick. A lot of people were like, she might get bumped on bump day. And that could have happened. And this is probably going to be her last professional race ever. I mean, that's basically what she said. She was going to run the Daytona 500 this year, and she's going to run the Indy 500. Her Daytona 500, I believe she crashed out. Didn't have a good showing in that. But Indy, she could make a run at it. People forget, but she was always pretty good at Indy. She was always good at those high-speed oval circle tracks. So she could definitely get it done. She always ran top 5, top 10 there. Didn't always have the finishes to show for it, but she can just ride it out. Stay out of trouble. Don't let herself get in her head. She can have a top 5, I think an easy top 10. She's got the horsepower behind her. She's got the knowledge and the skill set, and I think she can do it. You got to talk about Takuma Sato. He won last year. He's with a different team now, but you know what? That guy, he could take a baby carriage and run top 10 out there. That guy does not give a shit. He will go for a gap between cars that is just big enough. If he has to rub the print off the side of his tires between the two of them to get through that hole, he'll do it. And so he will be my new kind of dark horse now that James Hinchcliffe isn't here. Got to talk about Robert Wickens. He has been on everybody's radar since the St. Pete GP earlier this year. So, I mean, he's definitely in the conversation. Alexander Rossi won 2 years ago on fuel mileage. Now he's with Andretti Autosport. He could do it. I mean, there's a lot of guys that could go out here and just light them up and run away with a Indy 500 win. I would like Sebastian Bourdais, after his bad accident last year, he had to sit out the Indy 500 and they had to get a replacement driver. I would like for him to do really well. But who do I got for this race? I'm going to go with Helio Castroneves, going for his 4th Indy 500. He's running part-time schedule this year. He's basically just out there having the time of his life. He's having fun this year, and he's got nothing to lose. He's not going for a championship in this series or anything, so I think he's just going to go for it. And if we could have a 1-2 finish between him and Takuma Sato like we did last year, I mean, that would be pretty crazy. So keep an eye out for those two guys. And Scott Dixon had that horrific accident last year that took him out, I believe, while he was leading, or at least in the top 5. That he could definitely go out there and win the race. So those are the 3 guys you got to watch out for: Takuma Sato, Helio Castroneves, Scott Dixon. I think one of those 3 guys is going to win, but I'm going to go with Helio. And then late in the afternoon, about 5:30, 6 o'clock, we will have the Coke 600, used to be called the World 600 for NASCAR. This is just what it sounds like, 600 miles. It is a long race. I remember I watched it in 2005. That was the first year I said to myself, I'm going to watch this race flag to flag. I'm going to watch the whole thing. And of course, it was like the longest one in history. There was just a bunch of cautions, and it just went on forever. It went from like 5:30 p.m. until almost midnight. It was a 6-hour-long marathon, and it was worth it. Bobby Labonte, Jimmy Johnson, coming right down the line, beat him by a fender. It was a great race, and that's something you kind of get with the 600, man. Sometimes it just turns into a wreck fest, especially as the sun starts going down and the track starts cooling off. This doesn't get said enough, but when a track's really hot, it expands and it lets out like all the grease and oil that's built up into the pavement over the years, kind of like seeps out, and the track gets loose. The tires can't really grip to it all that well, but once the entire racetrack gets into shadow and the sun sets over turn 1, and they got all those suites and grandstands over there in turn 1, and then it puts the whole track into shadow around 7 o'clock, and then the track cools down and it tightens up. And now everybody's got to readjust. They've been racing for an hour and a half, 2 hours on this hot, slick track, and now it's a cooler, tighter track, and now they got to undo everything that they did at the beginning of the race. And this is just the first 100 miles. Then we go into twilight and the nighttime, and then the race kind of goes into its own. Now it's a chess match, a long green flag run of guys just kind of shuffling around, trying to get their pit strategy right, trying to get just enough fuel into it to get to the end, because the less fuel you have in your car, the less weight there is back there, and then the less weight back there, the higher the spoiler can sit up, the more air it can catch, and the faster you can go. So you don't want to just pour as much fuel into it as you want to. You just kind of have to get your mathematics right and put just enough to get to the end, or the end of that stage, or the end of the race. Most NASCAR races have 3 stages. This one has 4. So there are going to be at least 3 mandatory cautions throughout the race. And last year we had a long green flag stint, came down to fuel mileage, and Austin Dillon walked away with his first victory ever. And that could definitely happen. That's the thing about the Coke 600. It's such a long race. Anybody could win it. Anything could happen. There's so many things that can happen or go wrong or go right that really anybody who cranks their engine up that day can potentially win that race. It's kind of like the Indy 500. There's a lot of stuff going on. The racing's really tight. You just kind of have to sit back and watch. So who do I got for this race? Normally a good indicator is the All-Star race, which happens the weekend before at the same track. But they did something different with the aero package. They had these big massive air ducts, this high drag aero package, a restrictor plate that restricted horsepower, and so you just had like this kind of one-of-a-kind pack racing like you would see on Daytona or Talladega there at Charlotte. And for the 600, they're going to remove all that. They're going to have the low drag aero kit back that they ran all throughout the rest of the year, and it'll be pretty much a standard mile-and-a-half race. Who's been the king of mile-and-a-halves this year? Kevin Harvick. We're only 12 races deep into this season out of 36. Kevin Harvick has won 5 races this year. He won 3 in a row, Atlanta, Las Vegas, Phoenix, earlier this year. He's won the last 2, Dover and Kansas. I see no reason why he can't get a second 3-race streak in the same year. I mean, he's won the 600 before. They call him the closer for a reason. He can definitely get this done. But there are a couple of other guys we got to talk about. Kyle Busch, the other guy who won 3 races this year in a row, he can definitely get it done. And then Martin Truex, who 2 years ago dominated that race, led something like 370 out of 400 laps. Just utter and complete domination. Nobody has ever won that race that way like Martin Truex did a few years back. So, I mean, he's won this year at California. He can definitely win, to get a second win of the year. I mean, that can happen. And then, we could have one of the rookies, or one of the guys who's never won a race, Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, William Byron, Eric Jones. Eric Jones has always been good at Charlotte. He's raced his way into the All-Star race from the Open the last 2 years in a row. So, I mean, you want to talk about a guy who can get up on a wheel and get it done and get his first win and not have to do it on fuel mileage or anything. I think Eric Jones is a good choice. I think that guy can get up on the wheel and make some crazy stuff happen. And so that does it. I have Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton for the Monaco Grand Prix. I'm going to go with Sebastian Vettel. He did really good earlier on in the year. Always going to pull for Ferrari. For the Indy 500, going to pull with Helio Castroneves. He is my final pick. I'm going to go with him, but I would like to see Takuma Sato do really good. And then for the Coke 600, I'm going to go ahead and say Kevin Harvick gets 3 in a row. I've never been a huge Kevin Harvick fan, but to get 2 3 in a rows in the same season is pretty damn impressive. And like I said, we're only 12 races deep into a 36 race season. He can really make a run at this championship and get a bunch of wins. We might see something like Jeff Gordon did in 1998, where he got 13 wins in a season. That can definitely happen. So there it is. Sebastian Vettel, Helio Castroneves, Kevin Harvick. Those are going to be the 3 guys you're going to see in victory lane, if I know what I'm talking about. I hope I do. Anyway, this has been MIAMAFV Day 26. Tomorrow will be the greatest day in motorsports for 2018, and I'll catch you next time.